Hello and welcome along to the fourth edition of our end of season reviews from Hemel Hempstead Town with me, Daniel. It's part 35 of the Tudor Times today, and we are going to look back at what has been a really difficult season. If you're not up to date with it, don't be fooled by the 10-point gap to the relegation zone at the bottom. We survived with 2 games to go, and it was by default. We'd survived on 47 points, purely because the 3 below us just could not win a game. If it hadn't been for that, if we'd had semi-decent opposition, I think we would have gone to the final day, and we certainly wouldn't have got those last 2 results if there was still something to play for. So we're going to have a look ahead at a very big summer for this football club. We've had a year in the Football League, we've just about survived despite not really upgrading the squad, and now we're going to have to be ruthless. So we're going to have a big discussion mainly today about what players we're going to plan to keep and what positions we're going to try desperately to improve. We've already had disappointment towards the end of the season, players rejecting us for mid-table National League clubs that have still got a bigger budget. It makes it very difficult for us to accept. But we are going to plan ahead for next year. We're going to take a quick look at the Data Hub and Medical Centre too, to see what went wrong compared to previous years and what difference being professional rather than semi-pro makes on injuries, because that was something I found quite interesting. So if you're looking forward to all of that, our usual end of season roundup, please do chuck a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe down below for daily FM22 content from 2 long-term stories. It's a massive episode coming in ahead, Coach, tomorrow. I'd really encourage you to come and check it out. And then in 2 days' time, we're back with a transfer special. And hopefully, the plans we put in place today will be able to come to fruition in the next episode. There's also Cricket 22 in the eye above. The latest episode was out earlier this morning. I'm having great fun with it, so please do give it a try if you haven't already. And of course, there's links to the Twitch channel and the football podcast in the eye above, but there's plenty of festive fun around the corner. But let's start by having a look at what has happened off the pitch this season. And I mean in terms of injuries, and I mean in terms of the use of the Data Hub, reflecting on things that have happened on the pitch. We'll start with injuries, because this year we've turned professional, and there is no doubt about it, there has been a lot more injuries. Now, a couple of players we took gambles on. We knew Jordan Ibe had an injury history. We knew Oliver Turner, when we signed him before, was a little injury prone. But one of the things I've noticed this season, and has happened quite a lot, is that players have been getting injured in training more. Now, because we were semi-pro in the first 3 seasons, I think the first season in particular, we actually talked about it, there weren't any injuries at all, really. And we had 8 or 9 in the whole season. And I guess you have to accept, if you're only training twice a week, perhaps you're not going to pick up so many knocks, are you? Whereas in the games, we were getting a large share of our injuries there. Here, this season, it's been all over the place. We've had injuries galore, we've had loads of players out at different times of the season, and it's been really hard to find a consistent squad that we can put out over the course of 4, 5, 6 games in a row. The couple of spells we have been able to do that, generally we've done all right. There's also going to be a lot of turnaround this summer, so we do have to factor in this injury side when we're making our decisions for next year. Because looking at the likes of Oliver Turner, he's not had any massive injuries, but he's missed 3 months of the year with 4 different knocks. And that's something that just can't happen. We can't have players who continually miss 2, 3 weeks at a time. Lewis Brunt, another midfielder, one of them, and so often this season, we've been left down to the bare bones with Davey or Bandera and nothing else behind them. And that's when we were starting to get found out. I remember our first poor run of the season. It was when Turner and Brunt were injured together. We had 4 or 5 games where we didn't have any backup centre mids. We were playing the same 3. We were getting roasted. We've got to have a better squad and a more consistent squad. I know you can't account for some injuries, but Turner, they're consistent. So although he wants to leave in the summer anyway, we have got to think about those little things. So injuries, I just thought it was interesting that as soon as we turned pro, we were getting an awful lot more this season than we had been previously. A lot more players who have got a higher risk of injury, maybe because of the intensity of the games, the fact that they're still coming as thick and fast in League 2. We've also got the addition of the EFL Trophy, and while we're trying to rotate, with a budget our side, as soon as we've got a couple of injuries, we are playing the same players Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. And if we're playing them in cup games that are meaningless too, that doesn't bode well. In a few years, when we've maybe got the youth infrastructure that we can play 2 or 3 of those, or we can afford to have a 30-man squad, including 4 or 5 nothing emergency backups, then perhaps that'll be alright. But for now, we've got to find a way to work around it. Let's have a quick look at the data hub as well, though, because in previous years, it's all looked pretty good. Whereas now, maybe not so much, although it is quite interesting reading, and we're going to focus on the general performance and the defending, because you can see that's where the weirdest graphs are. The attacking, we're pretty much on par for everything. Defensively though, and general performance, it's really weird. The big problem this season has been the percentage of tackles won. Now, it's a problem for two reasons. One, because it's poor anyway, but secondly, don't forget I always encourage the lads to try and stay on their feet, which means the tackles they're making should be much lower risk ones. Despite that, we've got one of the worst ratios in the league, and that is causing us to concede a lot of goals. We've seen actually towards the end of the year, scoring's not been so much of an issue. The likes of Fernandes, Ryan Joseph, even some of the centre midfielders really improving. Yes, we still need a striker, but we're not too far off. The issue has definitely been at the back. If we look at the expected goals against a game, compared to the conceded per game, we can see there's a clear problem that must be causing that. Yes, they might be scoring some better chances than normal. Is that though because we're playing a higher defensive line and the chances we concede are great ones? Is it because they're having more shots from longer distance, 25 yards out, but they've got better players than the ones in the National League, so more of them are going in? We've got to factor in all of those bits, and to do that, we need to look at the team defending, because there are some very clear standouts here. Tackles attempted, miles off. Tackles won, a little bit off. Expected goals against the game isn't too bad, but the goals conceded is atrocious. So I'm of the mind, looking at this, to think, yes, we maybe need to play a little bit deeper, but do we also need to be a bit more brutal in a challenge? I know it might give away a few free kicks and penalties, but we can't have a repeat of that. And it seems like the lack of tackles is not because the players aren't capable of it once they're staying on their feet. It's because they're not in the right position. There is definitely a school of thought that we might have to be a little deeper and a bit more aggressive next year, because we haven't got one of the best defences in the league like we had in the National League, like we had in the National League South. We've got average players, and we've probably got to reflect that in our tactical setup. So we might, for the next couple of years, just have to be a little bit more cautious and just try and build our way into the Football League, because I'd rather be a little bit more boring, pick up a few more yellow cards and finish 14th or 15th than have to worry about relegation all the way down to the wire. We should say as well, I've been talking the last couple of episodes, particularly about David Gregory and maybe having to replace him. If we look at the goalkeeping stats here, we have got a quiet but leaky defence, which suggests, one, that all the chances he's facing are very good ones, and secondly, that he's maybe not good enough for the level. So we might have to make a change on that front, but he's still going to be here until we get to the Premier League. We have got to bear in mind match momentum as well, because we do find ourselves under pressure a lot. Now, I know the last game we were playing the champions, it was going to be a very difficult one, but we can't continue to keep soaking up pressure. Our defence isn't good enough for it, and at this level we will get found out, as we saw for a large part of this year. So defensively, I think the changes are largely tactical ones, rather than necessarily just personnel. But of course, we have got a couple of loan players going back, and if we don't get to keep them, we could be in big trouble. Going forward, I think it's just a case of getting a better striker. The stats, the data hub, I haven't shown you much of it, but you can see from this wagon wheel up here, everything's pretty good. The issue is, we just haven't got that man to put it in the back of the net. Even the cross completion has caught up a little bit. The fouls against per game isn't too bad. But for the amount of shots on target we're having, we're not really producing enough goals. And that comes down to quality in the final third. So that's where the data hub becomes interesting, because it cannot point out something more clearly than that. And that is where you can use that data, those graphs, to make a very clear picture of where your issues are. But let's move on to the big issue this summer, the squad. We have got so many big decisions to make. And actually, if you go back to where the data hub was suggesting problems, you can see from here how well that's reflected. All of the best star ratings are sort of in this midfield area. We've not got great attacking players. We've got good ones, not great ones. And we've got a really poor defence. But the star man is Gareth McDonough. We have to try and keep him next year. Hopefully there will be an option to do so, but I wouldn't bank on it at the moment. They want an upgrade in wage, we're going to pay it. Because quite frankly, for 250 quid extra a week, we can't afford to get relegated. So it's as simple as that. Kobe Rowe has been really consistent for us. I'd like to keep him and get in a quality player alongside. Particularly looking at Cole Kopekwa, really dipping. Has still played alright this season, but got caught out a few times. And Riley Harbottle, he's just not making it. He's not improving, I'm afraid. We've got Brandon Breyer-Ward coming back from his loan soon. He is actually now the best rated centre-half at the club. Whether that will change when he arrives back from his loan, I don't know. But he is 3-star ability and he is really improving. He looks an upgrade on Harbottle from the start. In midfield, I don't actually think we need a huge amount of work. It might be nice to get a left back in so we can move Brooks into his preferred midfield role. He's certainly better attribute-wise in that position. And we're also looking like we're going to lose Oliver Turner, who wants to go to other clubs. His contract's up in a month. And unfortunately, he won't sign a new one. The issue with that is he rejected a move last summer for 140 grand. So that's our first big sale that we've lost out on. Scott Egan came in the window. He's looking like a really good player already. He's improving so fast. He's becoming a bit of a superstar. And he's going to be one for the future. Just a shame that he was naturally a striker, because everywhere else he looks brilliant. And then probably the biggest squad changes are going to come in attacking areas, because Jordan Ives' injury has ruined him even more physically. He's now not going to be able to play at this level again. Ellis Harrison is out of contract. He is pretty over the hill, albeit he scored some crucial goals this year. And really, Sedende and Joseph are back up at best. Same for Fernandez. I would like that to be our backup front three. Aguas probably leaves at the end of his loan. He's not a League 2 player by trade. He is a versatile one though. So if we can keep him for no wage, maybe we do. But I would argue, bar centre midfield, you're probably going to see a lot of change this summer. I don't expect us to have a lot of this team starting next year. And whilst I do think that's going to lead to problems the first couple of months, we have to take the chance and build momentum, because this squad is not good enough. There are a lot of players who are stars in the national leagues, the likes of Oshieng, the likes of Kapekwa, Senga even, who went out on loan this year, Elliot Hewitt, the right back, Ibe earlier this season, and Ellis Harrison towards the end of last year too. They just aren't players at League 2 level. And that's the sad reality of it. We're going to have to move a few on. Some of the younger ones we might loan out and see how they get on. But for now, I think this is going to be a big summer revolution. No, last season, I couldn't do the work I wanted because we didn't have players available in scout reports. And although this season we have so far, they've all rejected us for National League teams on bigger money. That's a hurdle that we're going to face as well. So we haven't quite built that Football League reputation yet. We're not an established club. We haven't got a home ground within 10 miles of our actual town, which is a problem too. But this squad is going to have a lot of revolution. Probably 5 players out of this squad will be starting in the 11 next year if I get my way in the summer. I do realise though that what I'm asking to find in the summer is a whole new front three, a new goalkeeper and a new left side of the defence. That isn't an easy task, so there might be some difficulties along the way. I'm really pleased with where we are in centre midfield, but aside from that, this team is a very long way off. So that is my plan for the summer. Let me know in the comments if you agree with it or disagree with it. Do you think there's anyone else who could be part of the first team? Or do you think there are any other players that I perhaps shouldn't be giving much more of a chance to? So here's the formal end of season review. You might as well put a trophy down there for us staying up, because it's that important to us. We're going to look at the players that came in this year, and we've got to give a shout out to Jordan Ibe, because he was fantastic till he got injured, and his form did keep us up, but it wasn't enough in the end, and next season, he's not going to be able to play at this level. The January signings made such an impact. Kobe Rowe, superstar, solid at centre-half, gave us someone who we could rely on. Egan, who came in and played in a holding role. Basically 3 blind signings that we bought on deadline day, not really knowing their attributes, and they were all brilliant. Gareth McDonough on loan from Nottingham Forest is the best panic buy I have ever made, and I'd love to keep him here next year. Isted, solid backup keeper, and Teddy Davie deserves a mention too, because as well as him and Andre Brooks being pretty solid, Davie came up from the National League South with Farnborough. He cost £9,000. He wasn't expected to achieve much, but due to Turner's injuries, he was thrusted in a bit more, and he did play well. Those core attributes were crucial, and he scored a big goal against Gillingham towards the end of the year as well. So someone who will be part of the squad next year, probably back up to Brooks, who moves into centre mid. I'd expect him to have a better season as a result. And maybe Lewis Brunt, maybe Bandera, whoever else we've got in there. In terms of the outs, Harry Brook had a good season at Kings Lynn, but unfortunately they got relegated. Senga didn't do great at Boston United. How on earth the fans are unhappy about that, I don't know. Brandon Breyer-Ward, though, is certainly one for next season. Had a good season in the National League South while we were in the National League. Has had a good season in the National League while we're in League 2. And he's probably a good example of how the loan system can work, because now he's the best rated centre-half at the club, and we'll be happy to have him back next season. Let's move on to the season results as a whole. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't convincing, but we survived, and that's all that mattered. We were all very excited on the first day, weren't we, when we won 1-0 away at Stockport, followed by a run of one win in God knows how many, and that was against Grimsby, which, looking back at it now, was not the best or most exciting result. So you can see that spell after Morecambe is where we had our first midfield crisis, where we missed the star men in the starting lineup, and we just didn't compete without them. There were some heavy defeats in there too. We had a great run in November. We did okay in the Cups as well around that time. And we had a really good run in February after a huge run with only one victory. Solihull was one win in about 15, I think. And then after that, we had another barren spell. But those two wins, that Michael Fernandez goal at Grimsby and then the win that followed it against Stockport was crucial. And I still say it now. That postponement that was supposed to be played after Chesterfield, which allowed us to put a friendly in against lowly Ampthill, saved our season. Without that, I think we'd have been relegated. In the FA Cup, we had a good run. We played Sheffield Wednesday in the second round. It did bring a bit of money, but it wasn't particularly exciting. In the League Cup, we lost in the first round in the last minute. And in the EFL Trophy, a nice little run, but Forest Green tanked us in our poor run in January. The moments to remember. Biggest win, 4-1 against Barrow. And it was a crucial one, wasn't it? Back after, 7 or 8 games without a win, one in about 14 or 15. And it was a battering as well. It was the debut for those 3 new January deadline day signings. And my word, did they make an impact. The match to remember was a win away at Morecambe, Sedende and Ibe with the goals. And goal of the season was Bandera from 30 yards against Bradford. That one early on in the season too. The finances, not bad. Everything's up by the match day revenue. And that is probably because we're away from home. We're playing at Luton Town, 11 or 12 miles away. The prize money's great though. The broadcast revenue makes a massive difference. And that's virtually all profit this season. Due to his late season form, Michael Fernandez gets in the team of the year. Maybe I'm underrating him, but he just doesn't look that good attribute-wise. I don't know why he's performed so brilliantly. But there are going to be some big changes around here, because a lot of these should be nowhere near this squad. Let's get through to the accolades. We won National League Manager of the Year last year, but we have not won anything this year, as you would expect. Victor Sedende has broken a league goal scoring record by a player. 92 he's got. Of course, in the last episode, he got his 100th goal for the club too. Gareth McDonough became the youngest player. Teddy Davey, record transfer for 9,000. That shows you the level we're competing at here. Sedende, top scorer this year. Fernandez, the most assists. But it wasn't a great season, and there's an awful lot of work that will need to be done. The expectations are exactly the same next season. We've got to fight bravely against relegation. We're going to go and talk to the lads. Let's see if we can get our budget quickly. Well, just as we come back, another player rejecting us for a National League team. But big news on the wage budget. I'm not going to use it all. You know what I'm like. We're trying to build the club sensibly. But the wage budget for this season is 23,500. Last year, it was under 10. We have got 13 grand a week to spend, which means we can just take that next step up. I still don't want anyone really going over a grand a week, but if we can get people in on 800-900 quid a week, make them our star players, then great. And it means we don't have to worry about reloaning the likes of McDonough. We'll be able to pay their wages comfortably. Hopefully, he'll agree to join us. But that, I would argue, is a pretty good season and a pretty way to finish, because no matter what we think of the form, no matter the ridiculous winless runs we went on during the year, and no matter the fact that if it had been any other season and teams below us with a decent points total, we wouldn't have stayed up. We did. And that's the long and short of it. We moved to a different home ground. We didn't have much of a budget. And we didn't get to invest much in the squad. But we still survived. And that we should be incredibly proud of. So if you did enjoy the season, watching me struggle for the large part, but ultimately just about doing enough, please do put a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe down below for daily FM22 content from 2 long-term stories. Massive episode in the head coach tomorrow. Please do make sure you don't miss it. And then the same for the transfer special here, which will be live in 2 days' time. We'll see who we're going to be facing in this league. Is it going to be Salford going up, Notts County, Gillingham or Chesterfield? Hopefully, Gillingham will stay down based on the penultimate game of the season. Let me know in the comments what you thought of my squad review, whether you think I'm making the right tactical changes, and whether you think I'm keeping the right players involved in the first team. And will we be able to find the replacements we want? It's all good saying we want 6 new players. It's much harder to go and deliver that, isn't it? We'll find out if we can next time around. In the meantime, you can find Cricket 22 up in the eye above, the other series, The Head Coach, is there too, as well as the football podcast and the Twitch channel for live streams. But a massive thank you for watching, your incredible support as always, and I'll see you next time for Season 5, and hopefully a slightly more comfortable one with Hemel Hempstead Town. See you for the transfer special.